Hello and welcome to In Focus. I'm Allison Walker. This May, we are marking Asian Pacific American Heritage Month by highlighting the impact that community has on our state and our daily lives. Now, according to APIA Vote, more than 800,000 Floridians identify with at least one ethnic group under the umbrellas Asian American, Native Hawaiian, or Pacific Islander. And that's over 3% and growing of Florida's total population, and over 5% in Orange County. Let's take a closer look, though, at that growing presence, how Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are impacting their communities, also the challenges they may continue to face. So to do that, we have a panel of guests today, including Hip Nguyen, the Smart City Officer for the City of Winter Haven. Hip, welcome to In Focus. And we have our old friend, Ricky Lee, a drainage engineer by day and by night. Yes, the founder of the Orlando foodie blog, Tasty Chomps. Gentlemen, welcome back to the show, each of you. And so we mentioned that the broader Asian American community here in Florida is indeed rapidly growing, gentlemen. But that representation in terms of elected officials in the state legislature or in Congress, it really isn't increasing at the same rate. Hip, why do you think that is?
Well, you know, a lot of in terms of Asian Americans they're typically insular in the nature, keeping within the community. And I think it varies. I mean, Asian Americans is a community of contrasts, right? So it's not a monolithic group. There's so many different ethnicities, languages, and histories and cultures that's involved. So it's really hard to say, hey, this is, in terms of just particular Asian American experiences. But from my experience, we typically come from, trying to seek community. So we try to seek out our, people that are like us, either through a religious affiliation, through community, but I think breaking out in terms of leadership within Florida, I think it's something that's going to have to happen. We see that in other states where you have a critical mass that occur. For instance, I'm originally from California. We see that emerging. I grew up in California for 30 years, and it was very similar at the start. But as we saw the need to be represented, to have our stories heard, it's going to be inevitable where the representation is going to increase.
Yeah, and I was reading about some other interesting political trend that we saw, and this was this past November. Nationally, Asian American voters seem to shift to the political right. And Ricky, why do you think that might be?
I think they shift, left and right, but I think this past couple of years has been maybe perhaps, the silent, a majority of folks who decided to not vote at all. They didn't like either choice, so they didn't vote, and so therefore, more of the electorate was more right, and they were more energized, etc. Here in Central Florida, we see several candidates who were Asian American and Republican. Bowen Coe, for example, ran for state office. Unfortunately, he did not, proceed that way. Proceed through the primaries, etc. That was a rough battle. And I know there were several others who were in the primaries from the Vietnamese American community, and actually in the city of Winter Park, one of the city commissioners is a Filipino American. And of course, Orlando is home to the very first Vietnamese American congresswoman in our nation, former Congresswoman Stephanie Murphy, who is of Vietnamese American descent. I think, as time goes on, There will be more sophistication. For example, in Boston, they have the first Chinese American mayor in Boston, San Francisco as well. I think other cities, and I think it's just a matter of time. But regarding the recent trends, up it goes left and right. Just depends on, I believe, the candidates and what they have to offer. So I think
Yeah,
that's more of an accurate
you
statement.
and yeah, indeed, Ricky. And shifting the conversation just a bit wider, we talk a lot about America as a melting pot, and yet we also have a tendency to talk about groups of people as though they are a singular block within American society. Hip, do you think that that does a disservice to, say, members of the local Asian American and Pacific Islander populations, who may have diverse wants, diverse needs, and even beliefs?
I believe so. I mean, because we're such a diverse group, there are so many variations in terms of history, in terms of beliefs and culture. However, there are some commonalities that we have that binds us. A lot of that is through some world or global events that force us to kind of unify our voices and against. If you look throughout the history, we could look back into the Euro Peril. We could look back at the internment of the Japanese, and even in recent with COVID. And one of my fears too is, as we become a more multipolar world, and how China has emerged as a global force, that sometimes we have to say, hey, we're Americans too. We are Asian Americans. We are not quasi Americans. We're not parts. A lot of our Asian Americans. We have kids who are born here who act and talk and think like Americans. And so the idea is sometimes these global forces require us to kind of respond back and say, hey, here's part of our story that needs to be heard. And for us to use that as a unifying force versus saying, hey, they are separate. They're Americans, but they're not, so it's always been that friction. And so it's important for us to have this awareness, this Asian Awareness Month, avenues for us to be able to promote our story, to be able to go in and continually say, hey, we are your neighbors. And so that allows us to build that capital when things are not as going well for us.
Yeah, and as a corollary to that, Ricky, can we talk about then what it means to grow up in Florida as an Asian person? In what ways do younger generations see themselves and even their history?
It's great that you mentioned history, because in recent years, there was an initiative through the state legislature, through the Make Us Visible campaign, for teaching Asian American Pacific Islander history in K through 12. Growing up, we didn't really hardly had any information about the history of Asians in America, right? And it really helps to show, hey, we are part of this story too. Like Mr. Hip said about like the motto, "E pluribus unum," out of many one, right? We're all part of the fabric of America, part of the quilt. And so it's great to see that trend. I think, you're looking around here in Orlando, in Florida, as generations go on, as April 30th was the 50th anniversary of the Fall of Saigon, and which really was the beginning of the Vietnamese American community, as many became boat refugees reselling in America. And after 50 years, a lot of the elders are retiring, and the second, third generation is coming up. You can see that in the Mills 50 area, as new restaurants and businesses replace the older markets coming up, and getting recognition too from Michelin Guide and James Beard Awards and things like that. And so it's great to see that not only are the second and third generation being a part of the greater Orlando community, Florida community, but also bringing recognition and highlight as an excellence. So it's great to see that.
Yeah, I think a beautiful spot to pause for our first break, gentlemen, here on In Focus, if we may. We're at a pause. We'll be back in just about 2 minutes as we continue the conversation with our esteemed panel today. We'll be right back. Stay with us. And we are back on In Focus, marking Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. So we talked a lot about the broader community in segment 1, but I want to pivot for a sec and talk about each of you. Ricky, first, I said at the top of the show that you are indeed a drainage engineer and also, a rock star foodie blogger, of course. And what drew you to each of these very different roles?
Thank you for the question. That's a question I ask myself sometimes. Like, why do I do this? I think it all boils down to that need for connecting people, whether through places, through transportation, or buildings and things like that, or through food. Growing up, my parents had a little Asian market in South Florida, and it was really like a community center where people not only would come for their groceries, but also share gossip and news about from home and things like that. And it's really about community and fostering community and bridging those divides and gaps. So I think that's where my calling comes from.
It's kind of like that camaraderie at a hair salon or barber shop that that we all know. And so, Hip, same thing to you. So your path then to being the smart city officer for Winter Haven was what? I know you've been with the city for a couple decades now.
Yeah, I've been with the city for about 22 years now, serving as the IT director, then the CIO, and now my new role in the last few years as a smart city officer. So I like to say that my job is to make the city hip and smart. But basically, we're using technology to punch above our weight. I'm more into more recruitment and development. So we're doing some really cool stuff with AI, using artificial intelligence to identify lead pipe, predictive analysis to find where our water leaks are, and also to make sure our stormwater, using AI to remove contamination from our wastewater and getting cleaner poop, which is kind of ironic, but that's all part of the city operations to try to improve and transform how we do government. So I've been enjoying it all these decades. Yep.
Very cool, very cool. And yeah, gentlemen, there's really no question that our Central Florida neighborhoods are filled with diversity. So, Hip, sticking with you, in what ways has that opened up lanes for our Asian Americans or Pacific Islanders to really succeed and to do what they want to do?
Yeah. So, for instance, in my case, part of what we do is, as I mentioned, developing talent. So what we've done is we use, the technology and the implementation of technology. And, I would say that our IT group is one of the most diverse groups in Central Florida. So we have people from different backgrounds. We do have actually some Asian employees as well that we recruit from the local colleges, and just the exposure to the different experiences. So beyond just the Asian experience, but experiences from each other and sharing that's what makes us better, to be able to see different viewpoints, to be able to challenge ideas and assumptions. These are the value of having a diverse viewpoint. And so, the nature of our problems and the issues that we need to address, we need that diverse viewpoint. And just having a more diverse population, engaging and having more diverse employees in that viewpoint is just so important.
And you mentioned diverse viewpoint. So, Ricky, do you feel that? Do we have that enough in helping this community to succeed?
I think it's a continual process, right? We have our celebrations, in Orlando especially, we have, the Dragon Parade and different, for Heritage Month too, there's festivals and things like that, and people really come out to it. I think in the past couple of decades, there's been a lot more breaking down of barriers, especially with the internet, social media, travel channel, YouTube, et cetera, where long time ago, maybe you wouldn't have known about that Laotian street food spot on the corner, but now you do, because you might have heard about it on YouTube or TikTok, right? And then you'll try it out, or that boba tea shop, and well, now there's Dubai chocolate everywhere, right? So I think the world is definitely becoming more interconnected every day, and you can see that with everything we buy and use and consume. But of course, there are still issues regarding diversity where I think it all starts with us, right? When we come from a place of love and inclusion and acceptance, I think it just makes the world a better place. So, but it all starts at home. So there you go.
Starts at home. And Ricky, sticking with you, are there challenges then facing the Asian community that we aren't hearing about, but that we should be aware of and potentially more actively confronting those?
I think obviously still immigration is a huge issue. I'm not an expert on immigration, but I do know policies, are part of like, how, families are reunited, etc. Speaking from a viewpoint, from as Vietnamese Americans, right? We are children of war, right? And recently with what happened in Afghanistan with the pullout of the U.S., unfortunately, we have some uh, you know, friends of the government who may still be left behind there, and unfortunately, hopefully they'll be able to come to the U.S. and start a new life here because we're very familiar with that story. Um, I think also, obviously. Other issues, for example, we are not immune to inflation as well. A lot of the restaurants in the area obviously are struggling with the cost of rents and products, labor as well. And which it makes it difficult for people to continue business, unfortunately. So hopefully things lessen up and get easier, but we'll see how it goes. So.
And piggyback off that, if you will, are there then challenges facing the Asian community that we aren't hearing about, but maybe ones that we should?
I think a lot of just looking through history, a lot of it is affecting through some of these global trends. We saw that after say 9/11, where the South Asians were affected, because of their affiliation, or they appeared to be, what is conceived to look like terrorists. We saw that after COVID, when it was, assumed that the origins of the virus caused more animosity and the increase of Asian hate crime. So we're sensitive to these global trends, and even though we are a diverse community of ethnicities, these global trends affect us all. And so we want to make sure we guard against that, and to be able to tell our story that, hey, here's what's happening, and to be able to voice that. So that's going to be very important going forward, especially as I mentioned, as we have a multipolar world, and, how do we tread through some of these challenges? How do we go in and address these core issues that we need to address?
Yeah, powerful insight from you, Hip and Ricky, and I'm looking forward to your final focus. That's coming up just after our final break here on the show. Stay close, back in about 2. Back on In Focus, we have just a couple of minutes left here on the show. So, Ricky, what do you think our viewers should know about the history and the presence of the AAPI community that may not already be common knowledge?
I think Asian Americans haven't been here 50 years. Have been here a lot longer. Back in the 1800s, Liu Kim Gong, which was one of the first Chinese immigrants to Central Florida, helped develop certain strains of citrus fruit to help battle, the weather and stuff like that. And there's actually a mural in DeLand with Mr. Gong in there. And so we've always been a part of the community and continues to grow. I say to our neighbors and things like that, make sure we are there for each other, and especially in times of need, and emergency. If you see some discrimination, speak up and speak out, and just help each other out. So that is where I see things are going. So,
and Hip, we mentioned inflation in the last block. So of course, inflation is putting a pinch on many of us. And so how are our Asian American neighbors doing right now? And are there unique challenges they are facing? Are there unique opportunities perhaps for these Floridians?
So, I mean, inflation is universal, right? So it's a shared experience, right? So it's a nature of, a lot of economics and things that are happening that takes too long to explain. But the shared experience is what binds us, So I'll just give you a quick story. When I came here, our finances director, he never met an Asian person in his entire life. And that was a shock to me, right? But what happened over the years was we found a lot of commonalities. We loved vocabulary. We would try to outdo each other with vocabulary words. I taught him the word Schadenfreude, and he loved it. And so the idea is that there's so much commonality in what. So we try to find things that are common to us. I always say that technology helps connect people. And so very similar to how food connects people, right? So the best way to a person's heart is through the food, and you got to satisfy the lowest level of hierarchy before you talk about the higher level things. And so food is always a great way to bind and connect people. So if we constantly seek things to connect us and to share our stories, we'll find that we actually have the very same dreams and aspirations, and that we're similar. And we just try not to find those things that separate us apart.
And to talk about all the Michelin-nominated or Michelin-rated restaurants popping up, that's for another show. But gentlemen, Ricky and Hip, my gosh, thank you for pausing with us today and for your insight here on In Focus. Come back anytime. And folks, thank you so much for watching. I'm Allison Walker. I enjoyed your company today. Can't wait to see you right here next week. Take care.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. For more stories in your community, click the subscribe button here. You can also download the Spectrum News app or watch us on TV for the latest information, balanced coverage, weather updates every 10 minutes, and more. We'll see you then.